Brilliant Biology. Today we're diving into topic 5b3, the effect of abiotic factors. By the end of this video, you should learn the effects of different abiotic factors, which include light, temperature, wind and currents, water availability, oxygen availability, and even edaphic factors. We'll begin by looking at the effect of light. Obviously, light is necessary for photosynthesis, and so without it, the plant populations would decrease. There are plants, however, that are able to survive in shady areas, under trees, at the bottom of forests. These understory plants are adapted to survive in low light conditions because they may have more chlorophyll or larger leaves. Now, animals are affected indirectly by the plant population because with less light, there will be less plants and so less food for the animals, and the chain goes on. But they're also affected directly because they rely on seasonal light changes for reproduction and on a 24-hour clock for behavior. So when they go to sleep, when they wake up, when they go hunting, and so on. Now let's talk about the effect of temperature. Firstly, for all organisms, reproduction needs to occur at a range of temperatures, and for anything outside that range, the organism won't be able to reproduce. Secondly, enzyme activity of plants and ectotherms is highly dependent on temperature. Ectotherms are animals that depend on external sources for their body heat. So for example, a crocodile. If you ever see them laying out in the sun, that's what they're doing, they're warming up. Now, as you know, enzymes have an optimum temperature where they work the best, but they also have temperatures where they become denatured and they don't work at all. Now, there are animals that have adapted to regulate their own body temperatures. For example, us humans. We're known as endotherms. Moving on, we have the effect of wind and water currents. Wind obviously cools the body, which can create an environmental stress, and in extreme weather such as a hurricane or a tornado, wind can cause a lot of damage. Now, currents create a sort of challenge that organisms need to adapt to survive against. So for example, they can learn to flow with the current or to be strong swimmers and swim against it, and even to hold on to surfaces. Now we'll talk about the effect of water availability. Water is vital for survival and all organisms would die without it. But there are organisms that live in a dry climate and they are adapted to cope with low water levels. So for example, a camel that lives in the desert is adapted to produce very little urine so he can save as much water as possible. Now let's talk about oxygen availability. Obviously, most organisms need oxygen to survive. In water, oxygen is available when it is cold and fast flowing, and in soil, there are spaces in between the particles which contain air unless the soil is flooded. Finally, let's look at the effect of edaphic factors. As we've seen before, these are factors that relate to the structure of the soil. A term you have to be familiar with is leaching, and this often occurs in a soil that has a high proportion of sand. This is when minerals are lost from the soil as water passes through it rapidly. So for example, in the case of a flood, the minerals are washed off. This is why we don't often see plants growing in sand. Now, ideal soil is loam, which means it's heavy, it has a wide range of particle size, it warms easily, and leaching is very unlikely to occur. Let's quickly finish off by looking at a useful term. You have to know what is meant by a microclimate, and this is a small area with a distinct climate that is different from surrounding areas. The best example I can think of is a cave. It is darker and colder than the surrounding areas. And that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I've made a link in the description box with flashcards which you can use to practice this topic, and they're completely free. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this or found it helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much.